Marcus Sterling sat rigid in first-class seat 1A, his 8-month-old daughter Sophia screaming so violently that passengers 4 rows back were covering their ears. For nearly 3 hours, every person on this transatlantic flight had endured the relentless wailing that no amount of wealth or desperation could silence. Marcus had tried everything a billionaire could think of. He'd offered the flight attendants generous tips for solutions that failed. He'd bounced Sophia until his arms ached. He'd cycled through every expensive toy his assistant had packed. Nothing worked. The other passengers were beyond annoyed now. They were hostile. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. We love hearing from our amazing global family. A woman in seat B kept checking her watch and sighing loud enough to be heard over Sophia's screams. The businessman across the aisle had complained 3 times to the flight crew about the disruption to his work. Even the pilot had made a pointed announcement about passenger comfort that made Marcus want to disappear. Marcus was the founder of Sterling Capital, a hedge fund worth $12 billion. He could buy and sell companies with a phone call, but he couldn't stop his own daughter from crying. That's when it happened. A 17-year-old black boy walked up from economy class, his jeans worn thin at the knees, his backpack held together with safety pins and duct tape. The teenager stood beside Marcus's seat, not asking permission, just extending his hands toward the screaming baby with a quiet confidence that seemed impossible for someone his age. "May I try something?" he asked, his voice somehow cutting through Sophia's wails. Marcus was so exhausted and desperate that he didn't even question it. He simply handed his daughter to a complete stranger because nothing else had worked. The moment the boy's hands touched Sophia, the screaming stopped. Complete, absolute silence fell over the cabin like a physical force. 200 passengers held their breath, waiting to see if this impossible quiet would last. The teenager held Sophia with practiced expertise, applying gentle pressure to specific points along her spine while humming a melody Marcus had never heard. Sophia's eyes, squeezed shut in agony for hours, slowly opened and locked onto the boy's face. For the first time since takeoff, she looked peaceful, content, almost happy. Marcus stared at this stranger who had accomplished what pediatric specialists couldn't. "How did you do that?" The boy smiled, still working his hands along Sophia's back in rhythmic patterns. "My baby brother had colic real bad. Took me months to figure out what actually helped. This pressure releases trapped gas, and the humming gives them something to focus on besides the pain." Marcus looked around the cabin and saw something that shook him to his core. Every single passenger was staring at them with expressions of pure amazement and profound relief. The hostile woman in 2B had tears in her eyes. The complaining businessman was nodding with respect. But what shocked Marcus most was what he noticed about this young man who had just performed a miracle. The boy's backpack was covered with academic competition badges. His notebook, visible in his open bag, was filled with complex mathematical equations. There was an intelligence in his eyes that seemed to burn with barely contained brilliance. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with wonder. The teenager met Marcus's gaze with a directness that was startling. "My name is Jamal Washington. I'm 17 years old, from West Baltimore. I'm heading to London to compete in the Global Youth Mathematics Summit." Marcus felt reality shift beneath him as he understood that the person who had saved his sanity wasn't some trained professional. He was a mathematical prodigy from one of America's most struggling neighborhoods. Sophia was now cooing contentedly in Jamal's arms, reaching up to touch his face with her tiny fingers. Marcus gestured to the empty first-class seat beside him. "Please, sit down. Tell me how someone your age qualified for an international mathematics competition." Jamal carefully lowered himself into the seat, still cradling Sophia like he'd done it 1,000 times. "I won the Baltimore City Championship, then the Maryland State Finals, then the East Coast Regionals. Each round gets harder, but I've always been able to see patterns and numbers that other people miss." Marcus leaned forward, genuinely fascinated now. How is someone from West Baltimore getting to compete in London? Those trips aren't cheap. Jamal's expression became more guarded, like he was deciding how much to share. My community raised the money. The corner store owner started a fund. The church did bake sales every Sunday for 6 months. My neighbors who could barely afford groceries donated what they could. They believe in me, so I can't let them down. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest as he realized the weight this teenager was carrying. Jamal wasn't just representing himself in London. He was carrying the hopes of an entire community that had sacrificed their limited resources to send him. "What happens if you win?" Marcus asked quietly. "Full scholarship to MIT with research funding," Jamal replied, his voice steady, but his eyes revealing the enormous pressure. "It means I could study advanced mathematics at the highest level and eventually come back to create programs for kids in neighborhoods like mine who never get these chances." Marcus recognized something in Jamal that he rarely encountered in his world of wealth and privilege. This wasn't just natural talent. This was the kind of fierce determination forged by having everything stacked against you and refusing to accept defeat. As Sophia fell asleep in Jamal's arms, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. "Jamal, I have a business proposition for you." The teenager looked cautious but curious. "What kind of proposition, sir?" Marcus adjusted his tone, trying to sound businesslike rather than charitable. "I'm in London for 5 days of crucial meetings, and as you've witnessed, I'm completely unprepared to manage Sophia while conducting international negotiations. I'd like to hire you as her caregiver during my London stay. $1,000 per day, your own hotel suite next to mine, and guaranteed transportation to and from your competition." Jamal's eyes widened with shock. "That's more money than my mother makes in 2 weeks, Mr. Sterling. Why would you pay me that much just to watch your baby?" Marcus looked at Sophia, sleeping peacefully for the first time in hours. "Because you've already proven you're more skilled with her than any professional nanny I could hire. And frankly, I recognize exceptional talent when I see it. You didn't stay in your economy seat and ignore a problem that wasn't your responsibility. You risked rejection and embarrassment to help a stranger. That kind of character is rarer than mathematical genius." Jamal sat quietly for a long moment, his mind clearly working through the implications. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I need to stay completely focused on this competition. My entire future depends on how I perform over the next 4 days." Marcus nodded, respecting the teenager's priorities. "The competition comes first, absolutely. I would only need your help during my business meetings and in the evenings. You'd have complete freedom to study and prepare during all your free time." Marcus leaned back, his executive mind already calculating possibilities. "Jamal, let me be direct with you. In the past 3 hours, you've demonstrated something I rarely see even in my world of high-stakes business. You identified a problem others couldn't solve, stayed calm under pressure, and took action when it would have been easier to do nothing. Those qualities matter more than where you're from or what school you attend." Jamal felt the weight of the offer settling over him like a physical presence. This wasn't just about the money, though that amount could change his family's circumstances dramatically. This was about being recognized for his abilities by someone who operated at the highest levels of success. "Can I have until we land to decide?" Jamal asked. "Of course," Marcus replied. Then he added something that would change everything. "But I should mention one more thing. My company has a foundation that identifies exceptionally gifted students from underserved communities and provides full educational support plus mentorship. Regardless of how you perform in the mathematics competition, I'd like to discuss how Sterling Capital Foundation might support your educational goals long term." Jamal felt his heart hammering as he processed what Marcus was really offering. This wasn't just a temporary job. This was a doorway to opportunities he'd never dared to imagine might be possible. But he also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. Was Marcus's offer genuine? Or was there something more complicated beneath the surface? How would accepting help from a billionaire affect his relationship with the community that had sacrificed so much to send him here? As the plane began its descent toward London, Jamal realized the mathematics competition might not be the most important test he would face. The real challenge would be navigating this unexpected connection with a world of wealth and privilege, while staying true to the values that had shaped him. But as he looked at baby Sophia sleeping peacefully in his arms, he knew that something profound had already shifted in his life. This moment, this connection, had opened possibilities he was only beginning to understand. When the plane touched down at Heathrow, Jamal made his decision. "Mr. Sterling, I accept your offer. I'll help care for Sophia during your London meetings." Marcus felt relief wash over him, but more than that, he felt genuinely excited about the opportunity to learn more about this remarkable young man. "Excellent. I have a car waiting to take us to the hotel. We can discuss the specific arrangements during the drive." The car that waited outside the airport was unlike anything Jamal had ever seen. The black Bentley had a driver in uniform and an interior that looked more like a luxury office than a vehicle. As they drove through London streets, Jamal couldn't help but notice the curious stares they attracted. A billionaire, a baby, and a teenager from West Baltimore made an unlikely trio. "The mathematics summit begins tomorrow with orientation," Jamal explained as they settled into the car. "The actual competition runs for 3 days with different rounds testing various mathematical skills." Marcus listened intently, impressed by Jamal's thorough preparation and strategic thinking. "What are your strongest areas?" he asked. "Number theory and probability," Jamal replied with quiet confidence. "I also excel at finding creative solutions to problems that seem impossible." "That's probably more valuable than just computational speed." As they pulled up to the Savoy Hotel, Jamal felt like he'd stepped into a different reality. The lobby was more elegant than any building he'd ever entered, with crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and furniture that probably cost more than his family's annual rent. "Mr. Sterling, welcome back," the hotel manager said warmly. "Your usual suite is ready, and we've prepared the adjoining room as requested." When they reached the top floor, Marcus opened the door to a suite larger than Jamal's entire apartment building's first floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular views of the Thames River, a full kitchen, dining area, and multiple bedrooms spread out in elegant luxury. "Your room is through that door," Marcus said, gesturing toward an adjoining suite. "Complete privacy, your own bathroom, and 24-hour room service for whatever you need." Jamal opened the door and felt overwhelmed by the space. The bed was massive, the bathroom had a marble bathtub, and the desk by the window was perfect for studying. "Mr. Sterling, this is incredible, but I have to ask again. Why are you being this generous to someone you just met?" Marcus was preparing a bottle for Sophia, who was starting to wake from her nap. "Jamal, I'm going to tell you something I don't share often. I didn't grow up wealthy. My father worked in a steel mill in Pittsburgh, and my mother cleaned houses to help pay our bills. I earned a scholarship to Penn and built my company from absolutely nothing." This revelation changed Jamal's entire perception of the man standing before him. "You came from a working-class background?" Marcus smiled as Sophia accepted her bottle eagerly. "The difference between us isn't as large as you might think. The main difference is that I had mentors along the way who believed in my potential and opened doors I couldn't have opened alone. I want to be that kind of mentor for you because I recognize something in you that I saw in myself at your age. A refusal to let circumstances define your ceiling." The next morning, Jamal woke in the luxury suite, feeling both excited and nervous about the competition ahead. Marcus had arranged for breakfast and provided a schedule showing his meetings and Sophia's care needs. "I have meetings from 9 until 3 today," Marcus explained over breakfast. "Sophia typically naps from noon to 2, so you'll have solid study time during her rest period." The Global Youth Mathematics Summit opened at Imperial College London, a place filled with scientific history. Jamal entered the packed auditorium, overwhelmed yet inspired by the hundreds of teenage math prodigies from 70 countries. Professor Catherine Wells welcomed them, explaining that the next 3 days would test not only their computational skills, but their creativity an ability to tackle problems with no clear solutions. Looking around, Jamal noticed the contrast among competitors. Some arrived with top-tier resources and elite training, while others, like him, came with humble supplies and determination shaped by sacrifice. Remembering Marcus's advice, he reminded himself that true success came from solving problems others couldn't, not from wealth or equipment. The first round was an individual problem-solving exam filled with increasingly complex puzzles. Jamal felt a surge of confidence as he opened the booklet. The opening number theory problem played directly to his strengths. For 4 intense hours he immersed himself in patterns, logic, and creative reasoning, losing track of everything except the mathematics in front of him. When time was called, he was cautiously hopeful. Returning to the hotel, he found Marcus finishing a meeting. "How did it go?" Marcus asked. Jamal admitted he felt strong, but the competition was unlike anything he'd ever faced. Marcus could hear the slight uncertainty in Jamal's voice and recognized the self-doubt that often affects high achievers facing new competition levels. "Jamal, can I tell you about my first major investor presentation?" Jamal nodded, curious. "I was presenting to a room full of venture capitalists with decades more experience than I had. I started doubting whether I belonged there, but then I realized they'd invited me because I had something valuable they couldn't find elsewhere. A perspective and set of skills that money couldn't buy." Marcus adjusted Sophia in her high chair as she played with blocks. "You weren't randomly selected for this competition. You earned your place through exceptional ability. Trust the skills that got you here." Jamal felt his confidence returning as he absorbed Marcus's perspective. He'd been so focused on his competitors' advantages that he'd forgotten his own unique strengths. For the next 3 hours, Jamal cared for Sophia, while Marcus attended his crucial meetings. He discovered that spending time with her was both relaxing and energizing. Her curiosity about everything around her reminded him of his own fascination with discovering patterns and solutions. Jamal taught Sophia simple concepts using her toys, counting blocks, sorting shapes by color, creating sequences with her stuffed animals. "Look, Sophia," he said, arranging blocks in patterns. 2 red, then 4 blue, then 6 yellow. What comes next?" Sophia clapped and reached for the green blocks, somehow understanding the pattern even at 8 months old. The second day focused on team problem-solving. Jamal worked with students from South Korea, Sweden, and India, initially intimidated by their advanced training. But during their first challenge designing an algorithm for resource distribution, Jamal realized his lived experience was a strength. "In Baltimore, I've seen how scarcity really works," he explained, guiding the team toward practical, real-world modeling. His insight earned immediate respect, and as the day progressed, he naturally stepped into a leadership role. By evening, Jamal's team ranked among the top performers, and judges praised his innovative thinking. Later, while he helped Sophia with dinner, Marcus watched Jamal with new appreciation. He no longer saw him as just a talented student, he saw potential for true partnership. Marcus offered a life-changing opportunity, full educational support in exchange for helping build a new division dedicated to using mathematical modeling to solve social problems. On the final day, Jamal presented a sophisticated model addressing educational opportunity gaps. His blend of theory and lived understanding deeply impressed the judges. That night, when his name was announced as a winner of the Global Youth Mathematics Summit, Jamal realized he'd gained more than a trophy. He'd discovered a mentor, a future, and the power of one compassionate choice. The crying had stopped, the competition was won, and the future stretched ahead filled with possibilities neither of them had dared imagine. But it all began with a teenager who refused to stay in his seat when someone needed help, and a billionaire who recognized that true value has nothing to do with where someone sits on an airplane. Sometimes the most extraordinary partnerships begin in the most ordinary moments. When someone brave enough to care meets someone humble enough to recognize brilliance wherever it appears. This wasn't just Jamal's victory or Marcus's redemption. This was proof that when talent meets opportunity, when compassion meets recognition, anything becomes possible. The world had underestimated Jamal Washington his entire life, but he'd just proven that underestimation wrong in the most spectacular way imaginable. And he was only getting started.